Hello. Can you please introduce yourselves to us?
Hi, I'm Ingrid, and I am the parent of Rylan, who has CBS.
How long have you had CBS, Rylan?
I've had it since I was 8.
Okay. And were you diagnosed right away, or were you sick for a little bit before you had a diagnosis?
I was sick for 2 or 3 years, just thinking it was the stomach flu or food poisoning.
Even though nobody else in the house got the stomach flu or food poisoning, there was like a good 2 years where we're thinking, oh my gosh, she gets the stomach flu all the time. This is crazy.
Mm-hmm. And besides the stomach flu or food poisoning, was there any other diagnosis that they thought it might be instead of CBS?
No, we didn't go to the doctor for it either.
Yeah, we started keeping like a food journal. We thought, obviously when it started happening more and more, we're like, there's no way this can be the stomach flu poisoning all the time. So I started keeping a food journal for about a year, thinking that it had to be something that she was eating that was really disagreeing with her. But that didn't turn anything up either. And the frequency continued to increase. And so we just sort of skipped. And it was after one particularly bad episode that I was like, you know what? We're not even going to our pediatrician. We're going straight to a specialist. And there just happens to be an amazing specialist really close to us. And so we made an appointment and figured it out from there pretty quickly.
That's great that you were able to figure it out eventually. And can you describe a typical episode, like what it's like for you?
A typical episode would start with my throat getting tight and me being very sensitive to light. And then it would escalate pretty quickly into a lot of pain, me on the bathroom floor, ready to throw up.
Yeah. And can I add to that a little bit?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. So yeah, she's that is from her point of view, that's kind of what happens. Her throat starts to feel tight, um, she starts to get pain and then she starts to throw up. But typical is difficult with this syndrome because it changes all the time. It's its own being. So when it was very sporadic to start with before we knew what it was. Thinking back on it now, and then it was sort of sporadic even when we had first figured out. But then it went into this sort of very, very calendar event where we would go through phases where she would get it every 2 weeks, literally to the day. And then it would change and it would go to every 4 weeks to the day. And then starting the beginning of this year, she didn't have an episode for 4 months. And we were overjoyed, right? Thinking, oh, she outgrew it. How great. No. So then we're camping on July 4th, and she gets an episode up in, at 10,000 feet, right? So, you'll have to like come home or whatever. And then she had an episode, I think it was 11 days later. And then she had an episode a month later, and then not for 5 weeks. And right now, we seem to be on a 5 week schedule. And so it's funny to try to describe it. There are things that are typical, and there are things that are very not typical and not consistent. But very consistently, an episode is just like she describes. It always starts with her throat. In fact, the first couple of years when I was sitting on the bathroom floor with her, during the nights when she's throwing up all night long, I was Googling, like, well, what is it about the throat? There was all this, she kept talking about my throat, my throat, my throat. And so we thought, oh, well, maybe it's, reflux, because she had that when she was a tiny baby. But it starts with that, and then the pain, and then just 10 to 16 hours of intense physical pain, and vomiting about every, it depends, but 15 to 30 minutes. And then most recently, she had a 23-hour episode, and that was a really long, painful one. Although we know there are people that have episodes that last for weeks, and boy, do we feel that.
And is there anything that tends to help the episodes for her?
We take Advil, Benadryl, and Zofran, and those seem to help for We get them down.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
thing. That's the thing about this is if you can get them down before she starts throwing up, if you can keep them down before she starts throwing up for about a half an hour, there's a chance you could abort the episode. And that has happened to us several times where we've been able to abort it. But if you can't abort it, getting the medicines down, trickling them down as much as she can keep down, and maybe it helps a little bit, but really, if it gets going, there's no stopping it. It just goes, and it doesn't matter what you take, it seems like. And sometimes, even if we abort an episode, it seems like it aborts it. There's been a couple of times where we've aborted it, and then maybe
It comes back.
with a vengeance, though. So you abort it, and then like 2 nights later, it's just ridiculously bad. It's as though it needs to come out. Like it has to come out and run its course, and there's nothing you can do to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems to be a common pattern. If there was one CDS symptom you could get rid of, what would it be? And you can both answer this if you want to, and your answers obviously can be different.
I would definitely take away the pain.
The pain.
The pain.
It's so bad. I mean, you have this, at the time when we first were, well, even when she was 8, this 8-year-old is literally writhing on the floor, banging her head on the wall because it distracts the other pain. I mean, it's so bad. It's really tough to watch. I imagine it's even more difficult to be the kiddo.
Mm-hmm. For sure. What would you like people who don't understand CBS to know about living with CBS?
I don't really know about that one. I mean, it doesn't change my life a lot compared to just my mom worrying, and sometimes I miss out on things. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it comes and then it goes. It starts like you flip on a switch and it goes as though you flip off the switch, just as fast, both ways. So it is highly disruptive when it's going on, but when it's not, she's just like every other kid, and everything's fine. From my standpoint, I'm always worried about her being away from the house. Does she have a med when she's at school, when she goes to a sleepover, when she goes to summer camp? It's this process of saying, well, she's got this random weird thing, and it's really important that if she tells you that her throat starts feeling weird or if her tummy feels off, it's really important if you could just try to get her medicine just as quickly as possible. So I do this whole thing about worrying when she's out of the house, because if you don't catch it and abort it, it's just not worth it. It's so important to try to get the medicine down and just possibly abort it.
And it's so hard as a parent to kind of live with that constant worry. For sure. How, you talked a little bit about this, but how do you feel like this has impacted your life? Do you feel like you're missing out on things with school or with friends?
I wouldn't say too much, but there has been some incidents where I have missed out or had a less time. I didn't know it was happening, but my body was already going into that episode.
So you were feeling sick ahead of it, is that what you're saying? So you weren't enjoying yourself doing what you were doing as much? Okay. Yeah, I mean, like for instance, we went to Texas for a swim meet one time, and this is actually before you were diagnosed.
Yeah.
I think so. She must have been 10. And, we travel, our other kiddo swims as well. So not that big of a deal, but, we travel to Texas for this big swim meet, and, we get there, and the first night she starts an episode, right? So she misses out on this big travel meet, and all her friends are there, but she's at home throwing up.
Mm-hmm.
It's disruptive. She misses school, that type of thing.
And do your friends know that you have CBS, or that you have something that stops you from doing things at times?
I mean, yes and no. They forget, and I don't really tell about it because it doesn't impact my life too much.
Typically, it's when she misses a birthday or something, and I'm having to apologize to the other parent. I'm so sorry, my kiddo has this stomach thing. And so then her friends find out that way, or,
Mm-hmm.
if she can't go to play or something like that. But, you know, this age, I don't know that kids really think too much of it.
Yeah. What would you tell a newly diagnosed patient or someone who thinks they have it but is getting diagnosed, or even not just the patient themselves, but even the family? What advice would you have for them?
Always keep medicine on you. Always have some medicine in some place near you at all times.
And I would say to, as a parent, to listen to your gut, pun not intended. But I mean, I knew that something was off. It just wasn't right that, you know, she had so many tummy issues. But, you know, once the episode is over, you sort of go back to living your life and you forget how painful it is and painful to watch them go through it. So if I could go back and tell myself something, it would be to, you know, just go ahead and get yourself to the doctor. You know, it doesn't take that much time. It's not that much of an inconvenience. Go ahead and do something, say something, go and run through all the tests they need to do in order to rule everything else out, because the sooner you have the diagnosis, the more empowered you are. You know, to go and look up CVSA, right? Like you're doing the Google searches, you're looking for community, you want to see what other parents say, you want to see what kinds of medicines other people are taking, what works for everybody else. So it's just so powerful to have the diagnosis and go ahead and just start down the path. Okay, let's try this medicine. Let's try this cocktail. Let's try these 3 together. Well, what happens if you get in a warm bath? Is that helpful? Okay, that's not helpful. You know, just running through and knocking out the things that don't work so that you get to things that do work more quickly, because the sooner you do that, the better it is for everybody, the less pain your child's in. So I would say it's really important to just go ahead and get it checked out. It's not going to hurt anything if it's not CBS.
Good advice. And since you brought up CVSA, did CVSA help you with your CVS journey? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that she can answer this because she's not the one who's on it in the middle of the night. But yeah, you know, it's funny when you first Google about cyclic vomiting syndrome, CVSA will come up. And I think its tagline is something like "Hope starts here." And I think that that's so true, because when, you know, you're sitting on the bathroom floor for hours, I mean, literally hours, all night long, and your kiddo is writhing in pain, like, "Mommy, help me, mommy, help me." You feel so helpless. There's nothing you can do. There's literally nothing you can do but sit there and be there with them. And so, you know, when she's not vomiting and when I'm not just, you know, rubbing her back, I'm on my phone and I'm looking at other things. I want to know what everybody else is going through. I want to see if maybe there's something else out there we can try. I love the message board. I love the presentations. The last one I listened to was in July. It was, I think, Dr. Lee. And it's so comforting to know that there are people out there working on it. First of all, that they believe you, that this is a real thing. You know, she's not trying to miss school. I mean, trust me, no one would go through this amount of pain to miss school. But just to know that people are working on it. Research is being done. There's a community out there for you. There's this entire association that's putting all of these things together to help out people like us. So I think that CVSA was really impactful for me, even before we got our diagnosis, because, you know, these things come up in a Google search, and I ended up starting to funnel it down that this was going to be one of the things it could be. But just to know that it was out there, it was really comforting as a mom.
That's great. I'm glad we could help you in that way. What is one word you would use to describe CVSA, or CVS, excuse me? If you could describe CVS with just one word, what would it be?
Annoying.
I would say stressful or painful.